Hello. How are you? Can you see Charlie? I don't know if you can see her or not. Here, let's say hi. Say hi, Charlie. Hi. We're dog sitting. Well, technically my daughter is dog sitting, but it's a rainy day and she's at work. So Charlie is here hanging out with us. And she's a sweet, sweet girl. Good friend's dog. She's a snuggly one. So I think the girls are really enjoying the break. Not the break. It's the change. Because Elmer's not a snuggly guy. He likes attention, but only when he feels like it. Whereas Charlie's a good snuggly dog. Anyways, I digress. Hello. My name is Cheryl Arkeson. I am your host here on the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. We are here for week 28, 29, 30, 31, 30, 31, right? 28, 29, 30, 31. Week 31. I was about to think we were doing the next block, but we've got this week's block with it. For those of you who've been following along on the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong for a while now, meaning a few years, it's a familiar block. We have done basically a version of this one before, but I couldn't help but be inspired this week, and it felt like the right one to do. So I was out for a hike on Monday, solo hike. I've done one before, not a big one, chose a popular route, made sure everybody knew where I was. So it was that the dog just like knocked me, like, you stop petting me. She like put her head against me. But I was out for a hike, and because when you're alone, you can go at the speed that you would like to go to, which for me is slow. So I could stop, catch my breath as much as I needed on the way up. And take my time coming down. It meant I had the opportunity to look around a little bit more than I would. And so I was looking at leaves along the way, and that is the inspiration for this block. So we did do a leaf version a few years ago on the sew along, but we're going to do one today, and it uses up some scraps. So I don't know if, like me, you had just some trimmings left over from those big strip sets. So that's what I used. I'll show you what I mean, right? I had just a few of these kind of, you know, I'd cut another piece and this was the end of the strip set. I have a couple of these from either end left. Don't worry about it if you don't. Just make some, right? Take some scraps in whatever order you've got them in. It doesn't have to be rainbow order. They don't all have to be the same size because we're roughly going to try to make kind of a triangle shape. You'll see what's going to happen next, but you can go ahead and just sew some scraps together into this strip set. If it is smaller than the what this strip set would be, which is a little bit bigger than my normal size block, that's great too. You'll just work with what you've got, right? So much of improv is about working with what we have, which is why I'm using a scrap piece. Also because I got home like 15 minutes ago and hadn't made a block yet. So I knew I was going to do a leaf. I just hadn't done it yet. So these came in handy with all of it. Otherwise I would have just made it live with you. So that's it. It is week, what did I say, 31 of the Quilters Playcation Rainbow Edition. We have a rainy, gloomy day in Calgary, which I love because we actually don't get very many of these, and these are the days that I find it hardest to work, and yet I've got a busy day ahead of me. So I'm going to flip the camera around, we'll get to sewing, and that'll be that. I hope all of you are having a lovely week. Let me know if the lighting is not great. I just didn't want to do the overhead light because when I do these lives, it's not great filming in this spot without my light, and the room is a mess, so I have no idea where my actual filming light is at the moment. So let me know if it doesn't work. Happy to make some changes. We'll say hello to our ladies, and then we will head down. I'm going to move you over so that we're aware there's a little bit more light from the window. But again, let me know if it's not working, if we need more. So here's the block that I made. Just going to show you here. right? We have this leaf shape. You can see on the one that I made, I did not worry about lining up my two scrap pieces. The rainbow works really well because it gives us that kind of idea of veining. That's probably a better way to see it. Looks more like a leaf. The idea of veining on the leaf. In my case, the rainbow did not go like it went from dark to light and then dark to light. I just went with it, right? It's okay that it's in opposite directions. We get kind of a almost like a heart sort of shape happening there, which is kind of fun. And then as per my plan for my quilts, because I'm running out of this particular background fabric, I swapped in some of the blues to get me a little bit further. So let's get to it on the block. I will show it to you in the pastel version, and we'll go from there. So I have my two little scraps I said I have from either end. And what we want to do is sew them together so we get that kind of V shape. Because these came from, you know, really when it was cut off the strip set, it was more like that. Then we have, oh, but that does give me an idea for another block. All right, I digress. So they're in opposite directions. You may have ones in the same directions. You may choose to make ones in the same direction. But this is what we're going to start with, is these two triangles. They don't have to be, this doesn't have to be a perfect half square triangle. We're going to be trimming off bits on the edge. So if you're making a strip set, just kind of go with this shape and give yourself a straight cut here so that you can sew the two sides together. If you're making a strip set, you can do it so that it goes in the same order from top to bottom. Again, maker's choice, quilter's choice. So we're going to start by just sewing this together, right? I'm not too fussed about things. I know that every color will be in it. I'm just going to pay attention as I go to my seam allowances, that I don't flip them in any way. Perfect. One seam done. There's really only 3 seams in this block if you're going with pre-made strip sets like I was. So there we go. We have this. I'm going to press this flat and then I'm going to press it open, press that seam open, just because there's a lot of bulk on both sides. So this way we'll just minimize the bulk and not have it kind of all pushed to one side. It doesn't totally matter. If you prefer to press to one side, go for it. But I think just in this case, this is one of the times where pressing open is a handy option. You just want to make sure that this part you've pressed well, that the block is nice and flat, because we're going to be doing some of those layered curves. And so we want to start fairly flat. So there we go. That's it sewn together. You can see that seam pressed open on the back. So what we need next is our background fabric. So now that I'm doing my pastel version, I'm getting this fabric back out. You can cut it right off your big piece like this, which is what I'm going to do. So it will kind of look chaotic, but the reason I'm doing it this way is because it will minimize anything extra, right? So I'm not cutting off a really big piece so that I have a lot of trimmings or scraps out of it. You could go ahead and give this a press before you use it. I'm just going to go for it. So we're going to take our, maybe over just a little bit. I'm going to take my leaf part. This is what's going to be my leaf. And what we're going to do is we're going to layer these two fabrics right sides up. So I have my background piece right side up, this right side up, and I'm going to layer it and do a curve cut to create the one side of the leaf. Couple of things to keep in mind is I want to give myself an idea of how big this is. So my leaf portion is about 10 inches around. These blocks I square up to 10.5 inches. So this is the point now where I can go, okay, well, how much do I need of that extra bit there? It's going to shrink down. I want some wiggle room. So now I can go ahead and cut that square off and just move this to the side for the time being. Okay, so that was the first step. So you can do that before or after you make the curve cut. It's up to you. But now I'm going to make that curve cut. So I'm going to kind of come from this bottom corner over here up to there, cutting through both fabrics. You can kind of do it at whatever shape you want. And there is the scrap that I've pulled away. So I have this shape here. So I want to sew along this seam. So I'm going to set aside this piece, which didn't cut all the way through. That's fine. And I'm going to sew these together. Now we're sewing curves, so you know that I like to sew with my concave on the bottom. So that means flipping it around. I'm going to start right here, only worrying about an inch at a time as we go down. I do feel like, as I'm making this block, that I'm kind of surprised I didn't make an Olympics inspired block. You know, what with the Olympics happening and everything right now. Would have made sense. I do tend to do blocks inspired by what's happening, as this leaf shows. So, I don't know, maybe next week we'll see a Paris-inspired block. I'm not sure. The Olympic rings are only 5 colors, not 6, so I don't know. We'll see. Okay, now I do want to take you over to pressing. Actually, I'll just show you here before I go to press. This is going to, in all likelihood, want to press out towards the background. And it may feel like there's a big bubble sort of here that you have to press out. Go ahead and press that out. It may make your edges a little bit wavy. Don't worry about that. It's okay. It's not ruining anything. You did nothing wrong. That's pretty standard and normal. It may not, and great if it doesn't, but if it does, don't worry about it. So I'm going to give that a good press. This is where, when I'm pressing, I like steam if I can, because it does help kind of almost force things into place. I do have a little wave. You'll see it when we come back. But it gave me a nice, good press with the steam. So see, there's a little bit of wave on the side. No big deal. Now, you might be thinking, hey, I have this piece that was cut from the back. I'll use it for the other side. I'm going to caution you against that because it may not give you enough fabric to really get the block up to the size that you need it to be at the end. So I'm just going to check. If I go to the edge right over here, that's already giving me 10.5 inches, sort of from edge to where I could square up. I have more than enough in height, but edge to edge here, if I go and I cut and then sew this piece in, it's going to shrink more and I won't be big enough. Is that the end of the world? No, you could just sew another strip on. If you're running low on fabric, I can understand why you might prefer that as an option, but I'm just going to go ahead and get another square because I know I will use these pieces of fabric again, right? This is not wasted. This is a bit of fabric that I will use again. So I'm going to grab my, whatchamacallit? I'm just trying to see where I had cut from. So Michelle asks, would it work to sew the 2 curves first on the triangles and then sew the diagonal seam? Yes and no. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It will give you a different look, because what sewing the 2 curves does, or sewing the diagonal seam and then the curves does, is give you the framing of the shape. Now it's a little bit harder to see on the original one that I did, the frame, when I say framing of the shape, because it actually was bigger. And so when I squared up, I cut off the tips of my leaf, which is fine, totally okay with that look. But if you want to have that leaf contained, then you're going to want to make sure that you do the background for, you sew the diagonal seam and then do the background. If you don't care, then you could absolutely do the curves on each one, and then that this there. But keep in mind, you have a lot of bias when you're sewing that. This seam remains biased, so this gives the block a little bit more stability too by sewing that initial diagonal seam. But again, maker's choice. If you want to try that look, then go for it. Okay, I'm not going to tell you not to, that's for sure. I can just tell you what my preferences are and how I think the block will come out a little bit stronger. Okay, so now this one. So let's talk about that, making it actually contained within the shape. I want that. So I'm going to double check my width here, right? As I said before, I'm just kind of on. So when I go to cut, I have the room. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got this layered right sides, and I'm going to cut this. And I'm not going to go all the way to this tip here. I'm actually going to come in a little bit lower so that I have more options in terms of squaring up. I'm going to give myself more space here. So in this case, I cut the curve and then I cut my shape. Just had to make sure everything was cut. Right, I have that, and I'm going to go ahead and remove the bottom. I do have a tiny bit of selvage that I want to trim off from the bottom of that. I missed that earlier. Right, so this is now what I'm going to sew together. So again, concave on the bottom, and we'll go ahead and sew these 2 together. So did that answer your question, Michelle? I think for me, the notion of stability is probably a little bit it is the motivating factor. By sewing that diagonal seam first, we're stabilizing the strip set a little bit more, but it's not necessary. It just depends on how comfortable you are with the different techniques. That's all. Okay, so I have that last one. Right, you can see that there. I'm going to go ahead and press it. Again, if it gets a little bit wobbly on those edges, that's fine. This is a great block where using your flatter, if you have it, right? Pressing spray by flatter is wonderful. Just to have that block lay flat as can be before you go ahead and trim it up. One of these days, I think I am going to make an entire block or quilt from leaves made this way, because I love the look of them. They're just really fun. They have so much energy. And I think you could do some interesting things. And you could do it as leaves. These are improv orange peels. You got all sorts of things going on. Okay, let's trim this down. So my squares are 10.5 inches, right? So that's my corner right over here. And I just want to, in my case, because I came in a little bit, I know that I'm going to have my leaf contained within everything, but I am double checking to make sure that I don't have anything right on that sort of 10.25 inch line, so that I don't have seam allowance from either of these seams in the seam allowance for when I attach the blocks to the other ones. So I'm good there. Stabilize my ruler, go up, go across, reserve those trimmings for scraps, and then line that up on my 10.5 inch mark, stabilize the ruler, and trim up. So obviously I'm trimming off these pieces, and I could have cut the initial square smaller, absolutely, but I like the wiggle room of being able to kind of determine where things are going to go at the end of the day. So there is the block. I know you see a couple little bubbles. Do not worry about them. They are going to cause you no problems when all is said and done. When you quilt, when you sew this into the rest of the quilt, they will probably disappear. And if not, these are not insurmountable bubbles for quilting. So there's our leaf block. Week 31, hiking inspired. Not going outside today because it's rainy, which I love. And I would do anything to be able to just go upstairs and make tea. And I have 5 quilts currently in the hand work stage. I quilted 3 yesterday. 1 I definitely am getting the binding on today. And then there's 2 that I'm actively hand stitching on them. And it hasn't been cool enough all summer. It's been hot, and so I haven't wanted to do any of that hand stitching. But today's a perfect day for it. But I have to go do more work. So I have to go back to the office there. But on the plus side, part of the work that I have to do is go buy cleaning supplies for the kid that is cleaning up the space, because it's getting closer. It's getting closer. We're so close, so close. We had a plumbing inspection last week, which I think we passed. Haven't heard otherwise, which means we're just waiting for our final occupancy inspection. I think there might be another one. So yay. And then I got to do work for our bathroom reno here at home. So yes. Oh, the question, are those tea canisters Paris? Yes, let me show you. These are tea canisters from Harney & Sons, which I love their tea. You cannot, I haven't found anywhere that sells it in bulk, but periodically at, was it Chapters Indigo, or the Italian Center shop here locally, they have this brand in the canister. And so whenever I see it, I buy it because I really like this Paris version. They make a few good teas, but I really like this Paris one. And I love the canisters, so I keep them. And they are holding trimmings in this case. This one is holding scissors and stuff. I actually have like probably close to 10 around the house holding various things or sitting empty in anticipation of holding things. So yeah, I keep them and use them. So good eye, that's exactly what they were. I'm just going to double check that there's no more comments or questions in the chat. Always feel free to post comments, questions in the chat. Tell me what's going on in your life. I hope everyone is doing well. For those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, I hope you're enjoying the summer. And I hope you, the rest of the world, are enjoying it too. You found it in bulk at Fresh Market Grocers in Florida. I'm nowhere near Florida. I know Ms. Porphyria, who's another quilter that you'll find online. She lives in New York City, and so she goes to the store and buys it in bulk, and I'm so jealous. When she posted not too long ago about it, I was like, send me some, please. But for now, I'll do that. I drink my tea from a glorious tea merchant that's based out of Banff, actually, from here. I really like a couple of their blends. And so I drink their Earl Grey, and then they make this one called Banff Breakfast, which is their version of like an English breakfast tea. So tea leaves. I don't think tea leaves are this shape. I don't remember now, but since we're talking about tea, we'll call tea leaves, or the inspiration from my hike the other day. Because we are still very much summer in the mountains, and I will take advantage of it. Oh, you don't have to send, but maybe you do. Send me a DM. We'll chat. Thank you. I'm going to let you go. It is 1:30. Thank you for your patience in coming today. I'm a day late for those of you on Instagram. I appreciate that. But I got the 3 quilts quilted yesterday that I wanted to get done, so I'm happy about that. Tonight is binding night to get the binding on for the hand finishing, because that's how I do things, because I like it. I find it relaxing. I'm going to leave it there. So week 31, Quilters Playcation, Adventure Sewalong, the Rainbow Edition. So glad you could join me. My name is Cheryl Arkeson. I am your host, your instigator, your guide on all of these challenges. I will see you next week. Look who came to say hello, the other dog. Say hi, Elmer. He usually side-eyes a camera. It's quite funny. We like pull it out and then he's like, I'm not looking at you. I refuse. Kind of funny. So thanks, folks. We'll see you next week. Take care. Love you all.